Hello out there and welcome to today's most fantastic search engine journal webinar. I hope you're having a great day. I'm super excited to have you here with us. I am joined by Drew Blumenthal of Digital Drew SEM. Drew, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Heather. I'm so excited to be here.
So am I, and I think so are all of our attendees, because as a marketer, is there anything more important than tracking? I mean, let's get a show of hands, because I don't know what could be more important. I mean, of course, the right messaging, the right time, the right place, all the right things to execute on the campaign, but it means nothing if you don't know what those metrics look like. So today we are going to be talking about GA4. I think everybody knows and is super excited that that's what we're going to be talking about. So Drew is going to help you understand the main differences between GA4 and UA, along with how to properly set up the account, because improper setup can lead to improper execution moving forward. So with that quick introduction, my name's Heather. I'm going to be your moderator today. If you haven't joined us for an SEJ webinar, then please use hashtag SEJ webinars to share any cool tidbits from today's learning on social. I'm going to go over some quick housekeeping, just let everybody get in, get settled a little bit, and then I'm going to pop out of here, and then Drew, it's going to be all yours. But first, for all of those attendees out there, let us know in the chat where you are from. I'm hailing in from West Virginia on the East Coast, not the East Coast, but the eastern side of the United States. And with that, I look forward to that chat blowing up. So if you experience any technical difficulties, use the chat box, let us know. We have the wonderful Miss Christina and Shannon in our background for tech support for everybody for that. We have closed captioning. It's the little CC in that top right corner. Just give that button a push if you need it. And we've got a Q&A tab, so add any of your questions for Drew that we are going to answer at the end of the presentation. There's a little option to give those questions a little thumbs up. If you give it an upvote, it's going to tell us that it's something that we think or we know that is important to you all, and we'll do our best to front load those questions. And again, we'll answer as many of them as we can at the end of the presentation. Any resources today will be mentioned in your recap email, and I will tell you that you'll get your recap email, or in your recap email that you will receive later today will be the slides, the presentation, any of those resources, so you can definitely share this along with your peers or anybody within your company, or watch it again for your own viewing pleasure. All right. If you can stick around for a short survey, it takes about 30 seconds, and it really just lets us know how this webinar was for you today, how we can make them more useful in the future. Lastly, and I've already mentioned this, but I'm just going to mention it one more time, you will receive the full recording of today's presentation in your inbox later today. I'm sorry, I'm getting sidetracked by the chat because holy cow, like there's so many of you out there with us today. I'm so excited. And so with that, yeah, thank you all. Keep telling us where you're from. And Drew, I'm going to let you do your thing, man. I'm going to get out of here, and yeah, I'll see you at the Q&A.
Thank you, Heather. All right, so I'm so excited to get started. So basically what I'm going to cover today is a quick introduction of GA4. What are the big differences between UA and GA4? The basic setups. The most important thing is setting up events. Some of the reports that are really useful in GA4, linking to Google Ads, because I'm sure many of you that are using GA4 are also using Google Ads, and just a summary to really wrap everything up. So basically, what is GA4? So GA4 is the new Google Analytics that launched back in 2020. And basically, it takes over so many updates from where the old Google Analytics fell off. So not only does it look a lot different, it includes a lot of changes with, I'm sure a lot of you have heard of like cookie-less tracking, and noticed a lot of discrepancies between the old Google Analytics and maybe what you're seeing on your website backend in terms of sales and leads. And that's really where GA4 is going to come into place, is be a lot more accurate, because again, the goal of Google Analytics is to basically help you to quantify, figure out which channels, which pages, what on your website is working and what demographics are resonating, So this is where GA4 is going to be a lot more useful. And it also allows you to look at different attribution models. So back when in 2012, when the original Google Analytics launched, Instagram literally just came out. Like, things were very, very different. I mean, tablets were starting to grow, but the internet really wasn't what it is today. And people now are using 5, 6, 7, 8 touch points to really convert. And that is where the old Google Analytics wasn't able to track a lot of that data efficiently. So now with the new GA4, it's really a much more modernized facelift to what already existed. So here's the first polling question. So to kick things off, which of the following statements accurately describe your familiarity with Google Analytics 4? And this is really going to help me to really understand like how to frame this conversation the best.
And so for everybody, again, if you haven't attended an SEJ webinar, that poll should pop up for you. If it didn't, you can find it under the polls tab. But okay, here we go, Drew. We've got some of them coming in. So we've got 63% saying C, that they have some basic knowledge. We have 23% saying they're aware but have no hands-on experience. 4% are saying they haven't even heard of it. So you've got 10% saying they're proficient. So I would say that, you know, we're kind of rounding out with about 55% saying they've got some basic knowledge and 30% saying they really have no hands-on experience.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually kind of where I thought this was going to end up, because it's like there isn't a lot of really good knowledge out there yet. I mean, Google sends a lot of emails, but there's not a lot of hands-on training in terms of how do you really leverage this. And obviously with a different interface, it's really hard to even know like what to look for. So again, how basic GA4 works. So again, as I talked about earlier, it uses machine-based learning to provide more accurate insights. So that's where it is a lot better. And there is going to be a lot of discrepancies with UA and GA4 because it is able to track a lot more accurately. So with privacy policies, people were able to opt out of sharing their data. So with GA4, it not only looks at the original cookies to track, but it looks at website, mobile apps, offline data, Google Tag Manager, lots of different sources. So again, to get more accurate data, you're going to be able to do a lot more with it. So again, I touched on a lot of the differences, and again, this presentation will be available. The recording will be available. So if you want to read through each bullet, you certainly can. But for the purpose of this presentation, again, it's just the highlights of, it's been years. It literally was 8 years before GA4 was introduced. And again, the cookie-less tracking made Google have to look at things differently and be able to provide more advanced reporting based on feedback and be able to provide more accurate data as data has been missing. So how to set up GA4. And again, I'm not looking to give you the step-by-step on how to necessarily set it up, just because it seems like most of you have already set it up and know what it is. I mean, the easiest way to set it up for people that haven't or want to even check if they set it up properly is Google Tag Manager. So Google Tag Manager is basically a container where you could set up all your tracking codes. It's very, very easy to set up. It's literally just one piece of code. And again, all you have to do is, if you're still not sure, is literally Google how to set up GA4. And there's a very basic article on how to set it up. So again, I don't want to spend too much of this presentation talking about setup. I even sent a screenshot of what it should look like once it's set up. And you will see a check mark that says data collection is active in the past 48 hours. And that would indicate that it is set up. Another thing that I actually want to point out about GA4 that's a little bit different than UA is I get questions all the time of, hey, I'm trying to look at today's data, but I'm not seeing all of the data yet. Or why does my website today only show 4 visitors? GA4 actually takes up to 48 hours to fully show data. So if you're trying to look at today's data other than the real-time report, which I'm going to go into later in this presentation, a lot of it isn't useful to look at today's data or even yesterday. Like sometimes I even try myself at 5 in the morning to say, what happened yesterday? And when I'm disappointed at looking at the traffic, I also know that I'm looking at it prematurely. So it's better to look at things, I would usually say a 7-day period or even a 30-day period to just really get a full picture of what's going on. Because if you try and look at it day by day by day, things obviously change. So how to set up events. So events are definitely the heart of how to make GA4 work efficiently, because traffic is great, but looking at really what events that you want to track is like very, very important. And there's really 3 ways that you could create events. One is a button click, one is a page view, and one is a custom trigger. So a button click is, say someone hits a submit button, or you have an email button, or you have a phone number button. Those are all really great to track. But typically what I recommend is tracking things based on a certain like page view. So that means like creating a thank you page. And there's many times where somebody has an event that they want to track and they're using like a third-party tool. So like, for example, I had a call today with a potential client and I immediately saw they had jot forms set up on their website. Even if you set up Google Tag Manager in GA4, you wouldn't be able to track that specific conversion event unless you have a redirected thank you page on your own domain. Because technically when you're on that form, you're on a third-party website and therefore that event isn't trackable. But it's all great to be able to track all these events. And like I said, you can import them into Google Ads, you can use them for your own purposes, but I definitely think the more events that you could track that are valuable, the better off you're going to be able to show your results. So like, for example, when I'm doing an SEO client, I'm like showing all the metrics from GA4 and being able to say, look how many phone number buttons you've gotten, or look how many email clicks you've gotten, or how many form completions, or if you're in e-commerce, how many sales. So being able to quantify and say, all right, this channel produced this many conversions is really, really helpful for you to say, all right, this is working and I know I need to keep doing it and I need to keep doing it more. So here's another polling question. So basically, which of the following GA4 reports do you find most valuable for your analysis? And that's because I'm going to be talking about all these different types of reports. And I know a lot of you said you had some basic knowledge, but it would be helpful to really understand like which of these reports you have some level of comfort in.
So it looks like those are coming through right now. Well, here we go. Okay. And I'm not surprised. So far, at 50%, they're saying acquisition reports are the ones that are most valuable, followed by conversion reports, and then audience and behavior reports.
Okay, should we give it a few more seconds or should we?
Yeah, I think it looks like it's about like we've got about all the responses. We've got over 500 of them we have. And yeah, it looks like it's like flatlining right around that. So you've got 44% saying acquisition, followed by conversion, and then yeah, behavior reports, and then audience, with real-time reports being on the bottom there.
Yeah, and that makes perfect sense because again, if you're trying to get more conversions, really understanding the conversion report is the most important. I mean, where I find the real-time report is more important, which I could talk about later on, is bigger websites. So websites where there is a lot of traffic coming in and there are hundreds or thousands of people visiting per day, but each of these reports are there for a reason. So it's great to talk about all of them. So GA4 Reports Overview. So again, the first one that I'm going to talk about is a real-time report, but based on your feedback, I'm not going to spend too much time talking about it. But again, it's helpful to bigger websites. Another example of where the real-time report could be helpful is websites do crash sometimes. Websites do have technical issues. So being able to look at the real-time report sometimes can help you to troubleshoot issues faster. So when there is a fire drill, this is a great report to go to try and understand, like if you see all of a sudden no traffic going to the website, or you see a huge like drop in sales, if you're a larger website or you're having issues, like this is a go-to report for that, to kind of understand, like, is it a specific location that's having trouble? Is it a specific device type? Is it like things like that? So that's where this report can come in handy. So the user acquisition report, which is one of my favorites as well, this is where you can be able to see which channels are obviously bringing you in the most engagement and the most traffic to the website. So an example of this, and I was actually talking to Heather about it a little earlier, is I drive a lot of organic traffic to my website, but I also work with a lot of referral websites that I pay for to help me to bring traffic. So there was one platform that I've been watching for the last couple months, and I was paying $600 a month to get listed on it. I just can't see rationally spending on it, just because I was seeing it was bringing in around 28 users a month. I could see the engaged time on site was like 14 seconds, which was very low. And again, because I have my conversions set up for calendar bookings and form completions, I just wasn't seeing the results with it. So I scheduled a call with them. I showed them the exact data that I was seeing in GA4, and they were saying that I was right and that they completely agree with my decision to like not be paying anymore. Because now what I could do is I could see, for example, PPC is bringing in a lot more traffic and is bringing in a lot more conversions. So I'm able to take that $600 and then move that budget over to be more efficient. So again, this is where the acquisition report can be really helpful, because it can give you the data to make the decisions on what platforms and which traffic sources are the most helpful. And when you view that user acquisition report, which is in the screenshot, you could go to users, you could go to sources and mediums and be able to drill it down to the specific domain and the specific traffic source. And if there is something that you want to track, but you're not seeing it in this report, a UTM parameter would be able to solve that for you. So say, for example, you want to track your email campaigns. If you want to break it down to the specific level of the campaign, if you add UTMs to it, you'd be able to see the campaign name, you'd be able to see more granular data, which again can help you to make decisions on what to really spend more of your budget on. And then you could also see in my screenshot too, because this is just a screenshot of mine, like you're able to see which campaigns in Google. So obviously, if you're running Google ads, like Google wants to give you as much data as possible to fuel you to spend more money, you're able to break that down even further in here and be able to see more data in terms of your acquisition channels. So the engagement report. So the engagement report really can show a lot of different engagement on a page level. So it's great to know where the traffic is coming from, but to be able to understand which pages on your website is really, really helpful to know where should you be driving more traffic to. Another thing that I use this report for is anyone here who's doing SEO, I'm sure, is writing blog posts, to be able to use this report to be able to see which blogs are driving the best engagement, because you might be writing one blog on a topic and it just might not be doing well. And it's just being able to see which topics are doing the best, because with SEO, you could drive a ton of traffic for a keyword into a blog page, but if you're not seeing conversions and you're not seeing high time on site, then it's just like not worth it to continue driving to that page. So that's where this report can be really, really helpful to be able to dive deeper in. Or maybe there's a page that's loading really slow. Like this is a great report to be able to see that, because if you see a page with very low time on the page, maybe it just means that it needs more content on it. Maybe the site speed is low, but it could give you a really good insight in terms of how to improve your website and user experience. The monetization report. So this is more for e-commerce or stores where there is revenue tracking set up. So like, for example, I had a client this week that wanted to see in GA4 which products specifically were leading to the most amount of sales and from what channels. And this monetization report can be helpful because, again, it's all great to drive traffic and engagement, but if you're not making revenue, then there is really no point in running marketing or ads if you can't sustain it by earning revenue. So this is a really helpful report in terms of seeing that, and you're able to see in-app purchases. So if you have a Firebase app, for example, you could see revenue tracking in there. So this is just another report that's great in terms of helping you to understand from a granular level, like what's making you money. So the demographics detail report. So when you go into GA4 to set it up, it's really important under reports to make sure that this is enabled. So I do see this many times where if somebody sets up GA4 on themselves, I'm going under the admin tab and going under the demographics tab to make sure that you're enabling Google to be able to show this data, but you're able to see location and language and gender. Some of these are actually the same of what was in UA, but now there are even more of these in there. So if you haven't had a chance to look at this report, I know this was on people's lower priority list, but it is still a pretty useful report because it can help you to fuel where you're getting the most traction. And like, even with language, for example, I do see like I get 10, 15% of my traffic from people that speak Spanish. Maybe that means that I do test a Spanish landing page, or maybe there is people coming from another location that isn't your main location. So it can help you to think of other either types of campaigns to run or other types of ads to run. Like, it can be useful. Like, again, obviously acquisition is the most important, but still being able to look at the demographics to make informed decisions is helpful, especially when you're spending money on ads. So the next report is the tech details report. So this did exist in UA, but again, this is another way to understand like where your visitors are coming from. So it shows device type, it shows operating system, it shows the platform. So again, and you can look at the engaged sessions and see like, all right, I'm getting the most engagement from Android users, or I'm getting the most engagement from iOS. So being able to understand that data can even help you with your bid adjustment. So like, for example, in Google Ads, maybe you see you're getting less traffic from desktop, but they're spending more time. So then if you use that report, you could be able to increase your bids in Google Ads to be able to show more on the device that maybe there's less of them, but are more of the right user. So there are 7 types of templates when you're creating reports. So these are all the ones when you go into the reporting tab, which is the second one in the main menu, of the different types of reports that you could create. So, and it gives you a great description of what each of them does, but it's kind of trying to understand what you would want out of these reporting templates. So like, what is the goal that you're trying to understand? So for example, the path exploration could show you the different touch points that somebody is taking in order to convert. Because again, one of the points that GA4 was built was to be able to understand the multi-touch attribution, and that report can help you to do it in a much more easy and visual way. So advertising details report. So these are just the different types of reports under the advertising tab. I mean, these are definitely very, very helpful, and I use these all the time. So like, for example, you could see a visual here of just all the different paths that somebody is taking in terms of the advertising screenshot. And like, the conversion paths will even show you how many times somebody actually went to a channel. So sometimes I see literally somebody clicks on an ad, or they even go through SEO 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times. And it's like, why does it take that many touch points? I mean, it's interesting, but it does show you that especially people do look at things multiple times. So this report can really help you to do that. And this is just a screenshot of that multi-channel conversion paths report. So this is just showing like, okay, somebody literally did click on organic search 7 times, or somebody literally did click on organic search. I mean, 2 conversions, which for me is either a calendar booking or a form completion, literally 20 times. So it does really matter. Or with email, I mean, they clicked on 8 different emails before they converted. So it's really helpful to understand like, okay, this is what really made a difference here, and this is how much I should be doing. Because one of the common questions that I always get is like, how many emails should I be doing? Or how many ads should I be running? Or how much remarketing should I be doing? And this report can really quantify and help you to understand, like, I do need to send 2 emails a week, or I do need to send 5 emails, or I do need to have remarketing at a higher budget. Like these are all questions that really could be answered with the conversion paths report. So how do you link Google Ads and import site metrics? So while this might seem pretty straightforward, I see this mistake all the time. And once you link it from GA4 to Google Ads, you have to go back into Google Ads and you have to go back to the conversions tab, or the linked accounts tab, I should say, and literally go to manage and link in GA4 and click activate. If you don't click activate, the site metrics will not import, and you'll think that it's set up, but then you won't be able to see like average session time and engaged rate and things like that. So I just wanted to point that out because it's just such a common error that I see, that it's such a simple fix, but if you don't think of it, it's just not relevant or not working. So basically GA4 is a significant improvement. I mean, you could see some of the reports that are now available, the fact that the tracking is much more accurate now. You're able to look at things from a much more multi-touch perspective. Like there's a lot of upgrades here that, again, I would definitely spend time in here looking through each report. Like even if you're like, I know I just bought the acquisition report, looking at the advertising tab, looking at the demographics, looking at all of these different reports, because you'll be amazed at the kinds of things that you're going to be able to find. So here's another polling question. What is the primary purpose for which you currently use GA4?
Okay, so we'll give that a minute to come in. While those come in, I just want to address, so Sanjay is asking about, why aren't we getting in and showing screenshots and walking everybody through the system? And Sanjay, the big thing that I'll say, and Drew and I talked about this before we got in today, and it's just because everybody's setup can be so different, right? Once you really get into the reporting side of things. So what we're going to do is we have a ton of questions, Sanjay, and I'm hoping, if you have questions that are specific to your needs or things that you have, definitely add them to the Q&A tab. But the Q&A section always goes a little bit deeper, and I know Drew has some case studies that he's going to talk through as well. So let's see, there we go. Okay, we finally got some tracking on this poll. So far, Drew, we've got a little over 50% saying A. They're using it for tracking website and app. Excuse me. We've got next one in line. We've got 20% saying they're analyzing marketing campaign performance. And then the other 3, it's about 10% through those other 3. So top 2 are for tracking website and app and analyzing marketing campaign performance.
Which makes sense because it correlates with the other 2 poll questions.
Mm-hmm.
So. Okay, and this is just a slide really to just show where you could find me. I mean, I have all the different channels: YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, website. you name it. Obviously, that'll be in the deck as well, so I don't want to spend too much time on that. And now it's time for the Q&A, which, again, I don't want to be too specific with the answers because the goal was to keep this as generalized as possible, to just provide value to as many people as possible. But now if you do have specific questions, I'm happy to answer them. And then hopefully we could get through as many as we can in the next half hour.
I love it. John Schrader says, what, no Threads account? Wait, no Threads account yet, Drew?
I do have a Threads account. I actually posted about the webinar yesterday on it. So
there you go.
It is there. Just
All right.
didn't update it in the slides.
Just didn't update it yet. All right. So let's get to some of these questions because there are some good ones in here. And I'm hoping that this is where we can, lay a little bit more deeper knowledge into this and help you all out. So I like this question from Benjamin, who asks, can you give us the main uses in GA4 for SEO? So if they're looking at it specifically from an SEO perspective, Drew, what are some places that they should be focusing on?
Number one, connect your Google Search Console to it. So Google Search Console is obviously used for tracking, like specifically for SEO, but you can link it and then it'll be able to show you the keywords. It'll be able to give you more granular data in GA4. So that's always the first thing that I would do. And then use it really to look at the SEO tab in terms of conversions and to look at it from in the acquisition tab, like what conversions you're getting. Because a lot of times the questions that I get for SEO is like, okay, how many conversions did I get? And is there an ROI there? And that's where I look under the acquisition tab and be able to say, all right, your traffic went up 20%, or your traffic went up this amount and you got this many conversions in each category. So that's a way that I'm able to measure SEO success within GA4. But again, Search Console could give you a lot of that data as well. It's not the conversion data though. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think that gives them a good starting point. So Orla asks, what are some paid ads and organic social media traffic showing? Why are some of the paid ads and organic social media traffic showing under referrals?
So referral is just usually general in terms of like Google doesn't know. So it's like you have to set up UTM parameters. So if you're running Facebook ads, for example, putting a UTM in there for each of your ads, like, because again, if Google doesn't own it, you do typically have to set up a UTM. So again, there's plenty of UTM builders. Like if you Google UTM builder, you could find one that works for you. And honestly, just having that consistent structure. So having campaign name, having ad group, having all the different pieces of like what you would want to track in that UTM and GA4, and then implementing those in.
Okay. So we have so many questions. So I'm going through all the ones that have the upvote first. So make sure that if you have a question, you get it in there. Okay. So Yvonne says, with UA, I was able to ignore internal visits to our website, but now GA4 seems to have dropped that setting. How do I reset that in GA4?
That is definitely something that I have to come back to. I've not looked into that, but definitely, like I said, message me separately, or Heather, you could send me a list of questions perhaps that I wasn't able to answer in the person's email, and then I could get back to them on that answer.
Yeah, and you'll receive all of that. So for everybody who is out there throwing questions our way, any questions that we don't get to, we're giving all of that to Drew so he can follow up with you afterwards with that. All right, let's see. So, and Andrea asked the same thing with 11 upvotes on that. So we've got a couple questions on that.
Yeah,
okay, so
people care. So
yeah,
I will definitely address that.
I mean, I can tell you as a marketer, right? And I'm sure that most of us are, and, we're on the website, marketer, SEO, developer, we're on the website constantly. So I know I don't want it tracking, my performance on there because it could skew the numbers. Right. Okay. So Robin asks, why is there so much unassigned in my acquisitions report?
Yeah. I mean, I'd have to probably that one, I would say need to look at it in more details, but again, UTM should usually be able to help with a lot of the data that's in the gray area, or it could also be depending on location, because obviously the US will show the most amount of data, but in other countries where there is more aggressive privacy policies or things like that, like I don't know how many people are on here from like the UK or the EU or other countries like that, there is going to be a lot more unassigned data just because there is stricter policies in terms of privacy that like GA4 isn't going to be able to track.
Okay. And that's actually kind of segues into this next question really well. Shavendra asks, I'm getting 60% less sessions from a geo compared to UA. Is there anything that can be done? So is that part of this problem, or is it something else?
I mean, it could definitely be part of that problem depending on the location. Definitely just checking the tracking too, because it's possible. Another thing that could be is like if you have multiple domains, you have to install GA4 on all the domains. So like that's another common problem where I see a client where they have a landing page domain and then they have a main website. So it's like when installing GA4, you need to make sure you install it on all of your domains. And I've seen people have issues with that. So that could be it as well.
Okay. And so Jody asked this question early on. And so for anybody who's not out there, can you explain what is offline data? And let's even take that a little bit deeper. Like, so with the offline data, how do you bring that into GA4 to, you know, give you that 360-degree view?
So offline data is either people going in store. So say you have like in-store traffic, or say you have a CRM like HubSpot or Salesforce or things like that. That's like what's considered offline data. So you're able to sync that either depending on what platform you have, syncing the APIs, or uploading honestly spreadsheets to it. So you could upload that data, and that could be really helpful. I mean, you could do the same thing with Google Ads, where I even had a conversation with someone earlier today where they're like, my lead quality isn't that good, where you could sync your CRM and sync conversion offline data with Google Ads to help train the algorithm better. And I even do that with my own HubSpot, where if I mark a lead as an MQL or SQL, I'm feeding that data to Google to optimize better. So that's where Google doesn't always get that offline data. But if you have a CRM, which I highly, highly recommend getting one, or if you have it even in Google Sheets, like you could provide that feedback loop to Google and be able to optimize that data.
Perfect. Anything they need to know from a perspective of you know, setting this up? Is it depend? I'm sure it's dependent on the CRM, but any like, you know, best practices to help them get started?
I mean, to really sync the data from a Google Ads perspective, which I know this is a GA4 one, you got to have the G-CLID connected to it. So for that feedback loop to go back, you need to have the Google Click ID. But again, every system is a little bit different. When selecting a CRM, unless you have a specific reason, I would go with one of the big players, which is like HubSpot or Salesforce or Zoho, because they tend to have a lot of the integrations already set up. So if you're using a mom and pop CRM, not that there's anything wrong with it, it's just you're going to have a tougher time with the offline data, or they might not even have the API be open where the sync might not be possible.
Yeah. So a consideration if you are looking at a CRM, that it has that ability. So this, I know the question, but it's got a couple upvotes, so we're going to ask. But Atul asks, is there a way to capture historic data from UA into GA4?
There is not a way, unfortunately. I would recommend just keeping UA open as long as you can. I mean, I'm not surprised in terms of it hasn't fully shut off data yet in UA. Like they keep saying, we're going to do it, we're going to do it. And they haven't done it, or Google hasn't done it yet. So that's why I tried to push people as much as possible to set up GA4 earlier. So like I was pretty much setting everybody up that I worked with in January and February, knowing that that year over year data is important. So like what I'd suggest, because you can't import UA data to GA4, is like create a spreadsheet of the data that you want to compare, and then put the GA4 data in the spreadsheet, and then put the UA data, and then put in formulas to compare the year-over-year data, and then like make your own reports for it.
Excellent. I'm sure we might get some more questions on that. Okay, let me get back to my spot. So here we go. There's so many questions. All right. So I liked this question from, I'm so sorry, the refresh is so fast. Okay, from Ryan. I think I know the answer, but maybe you can talk about how to replicate it. But Ryan is asking, what is the best way to replace UA dashboards in GA? So we know it's not an easy import, but is there a good way to do it?
I mean, you could create a report, a custom report. Another way that you could do it is take the report and import it into Looker Studio. So Looker Studio, which is Data Studio, could be another way to take that old report and then put it in like Looker, and then it would be able to replicate it. Or you could try and import the data from the spreadsheet. So creating one of the templates that you feel like could be the best fit, and then copy and pasting the data from the old report, and then just reformatting it. So that would at least save, you might have to spend a little work reformatting it, but at least it would keep all the hard work of the formulas and the tables if you have any. So that would be the best way that I would recommend doing that.
Okay. And then Bill asks a question about UTM parameters. And I saw somebody, I think Tom replied to a UTM thing earlier. So the question is, are UTM parameters different in GA4 than UA?
They are not. So I typically find the same UTM parameters that I was using in Facebook and emails and everything else that I was doing. It still works exactly the same. So that's nice that they decided, because like a UTM is just a tracking code. So unless Google decided to change its entire website structure, which they're not going to do, it still would be the same UTM parameters that you've been using for years in UA.
Okay, I like this question. This is a little open-ended for you here, Drew. So what is your favorite feature from GA4 that analytics didn't offer? And if you're going to give us a case study, which we would always love to have, stick a vertical with that, because we did talk, somebody was asking, they were curious on the one poll, when we had all of the answers of what reports were important, somebody asked they'd be curious which verticals, because, that kind of depends on really what you're tracking, right? So what's your favorite feature, and how do you use it for your clients?
Yeah, I definitely like the feature where you're able to look at multi-touch points, or like being able to look at like multi-attribution models, because one thing that always bothered me about UA was everything was always last click, last click, last click. And other than like 2 tabs for e-commerce, which not everybody even was e-commerce, like you weren't able to see everything in first click or last click or data driven. Like now that you're able to look at things from different attribution models, like now that's available to everybody, because it was only available in Google Analytics 360 before. I find that's really helpful. And I don't think it goes to an entire vertical, but I think it goes across whether you're lead gen or e-commerce. Like people just have so many things in their face thrown at them, like whether it's organic, whether it's email, whether it's SEO, like searching, like people are just online all the time and just bombarded with messages. So I like to look at things when I'm making data-driven decisions from honestly first click, last click, and data-driven. So like I like that ability to be able to do that, because there are times where, say for an example, email is typically a last click channel. So if you look at things from a data-driven, sometimes the emails don't seem that effective. Or like, for example, maybe there is a platform where you're writing blogs and you're doing like guest posting, and it's like typically that's the tip of the iceberg. So again, that's like a first touch attribution where it could look wonderful, but then when you put it in last click, it looks terrible. So if years ago when I was using UA, it's just like sometimes I would make the wrong decision of like, I should pause this, or I shouldn't use this, or I shouldn't spend as much on this because I wasn't able to look at it from different attribution perspectives.
Got it. Makes sense. Okay, so I like this question. Are there limitations of cross-domain tracking in GA4? Andrew was asking about that one.
I mean, there really shouldn't be. It's more of the matter of with every single like domain that you're using, you want to make sure that the tracking is set up because it is set up at the domain level. So again, every platform that you use should be able to install GA4. I mean, there's either going to be a header, a place where you could put code in the header, or there should be a place where there should be an integration button. So a lot of websites just have it like, oh, for GA4, just put in your ID here or click this button and it'll sync for you. So there really shouldn't be a platform that doesn't allow GA4 integration. And honestly, my advice is if the platform doesn't allow for some type of integration with it, you shouldn't probably be on it, to be honest.
Okay. Let's see. So, and kind of to follow, well, let's see. Sorry, I'm a little all over the place. There's so many good questions. Like I'm having a hard time parsing through them because I'm like, oh, I want to ask that one and I want to ask this one. So, you know, one of the things about GA4 is, and somebody brought this up, that they find path exploration more difficult, more confusing than in UA. And, you know, between path exploration and then GA4 is big for like that journey, you're right, your customer journey. So walk us through maybe some use cases or some ways that you've set this up, that you've had success. Like how can marketers best use that path exploration, and what might a customer journey look like in GA4?
Right. So it's kind of understanding what is the goal going to be with that path exploration, meaning what am I trying to get out of it? Because with path exploration, there's so many ways that you could create it. So it's like, if the question that you're trying to answer is what channel is working the best or which channels are working the best, then you'd want to set up that path exploration to include channels. If you're trying to understand your website, you want to put, all right, what URLs in this path exploration am I like looking for? And it's like, I do agree, like the interface isn't as clean as it was on UA, but that's kind of my advice when creating reports in general, is just you need to understand with this report, like what are you trying to learn or what are you trying to understand? Because if you're just playing around in the tool and don't have a specific goal of what you're trying to understand, then you're just going to get very confused and it's kind of like you're going to get lost in the weaves. Oh, you're on mute, I think. Heather, you're muted.
I was, thank you. I'm sorry. I really try to make sure that doesn't happen. All right. So Zach asked a question, and you did touch on Looker Studio. But Zach says that used to be able to create beautiful branded reports for clients in Looker and have not been able to have the same level of integration with GA4 as they did with UA. So my question is that something that you've experienced, or is there a way around this?
I mean, Looker was rebranded like about a year ago, so they also got rid of some templates. I mean, I think the purpose was to simplify the platform. I mean, Looker is for free, GA4 is for free. There's still a lot of great template options, but there are other analytics tools out there that can provide additional templates and additional formatting things that unfortunately like Looker and GA4 can't provide. Like they have the 7 templates now in GA4, which UA did have so many more. So it's frustrating, but I think it's that I guess Google was seeing like people weren't using certain ones and they just wanted to make it easier, because they're looking at it from a perspective of somebody probably being so overwhelmed and like not knowing what to pick. So like, we're going to make the choices less for you to make it easier, so you are more likely to use our tool. So, I mean, and then the other thing too is if there are things that you want that maybe from a design perspective aren't available, there's also things that you could design from even like a Canva perspective that maybe you could put in, or you go into PowerPoint or go into a tool like that where there are more table options, and then you copy and paste that table in. Like, there's always ways that you could customize things the way that you want. It just might not all be done in the same platform.
Gotcha. Okay. So, quick point out. So two quick things as we're starting to wrap up, but we're going to take a couple more questions. The first is so in your handouts, in the handouts tab, and I'm going to push this now. You should be able to access a GA4 implementation checklist that Drew put together for you all. And so you can snag that under the handouts tab. If for some reason it doesn't work for you or whatever, just shoot us a note. It'll be included. We'll include a link to that in the recap email that you'll get. The second thing that I want to point out is, so proofing fail, Daryl pointed out that our next webinar says that it's Wednesday, June 26th, which would be in the past. But if anybody has a time machine, I am happy to be friends. Let's talk about that. But this next webinar for Conductor is actually coming up towards the end of the month. So this month, not last month. So that'll be coming up. So with that, let's see if we could take one or two more questions. Drew, how are you feeling about it?
Yeah, no, this is great. And it makes me feel so happy that everybody was paying attention and has so many questions, and I'm happy to answer more of them over email. So again, I'm happy to be flexible and answer anyone's questions that you have that weren't able to be answered in this half hour.
Awesome. Well, we'll take two more. All right. So somebody asked, and I'm sorry, I do try to grab names, but again, these are refreshing so fast I wasn't able to. Somebody asked if we're going to have an additional webinar for more advanced users, which we may do that at some point. So if anybody out there is interested, and if you haven't subscribed, go to searchenginejournal.com/subscribe and sign up for our newsletter, and that'll give you notifications anytime we have new webinars coming out, along with all of the other news that we do publish on a daily basis. All right. That's enough about us. They are here for us, but let's be real, they're here for you. So Sashi is asking, what is the difference in events and conversions? Should they all be considered conversions? So is there a difference there, and when they're setting it up, do they need to treat them differently?
Yeah, so events are a bit broader. So events could even be like a video view or a page scroll. So events are more broader things, where conversions to me is something that quantifies either a sale or somebody calling or filling out a form. So again, some people call conversions different things, but to me, that's what they are. Like, even the events, once you set up events, Google Analytics will give you like default ones like page scroll and things like that. But to me, if you don't get their information, like, how can you quantify and how can you follow up and how can you make money off of that person? So to me, unless I could feel like there's a path to money, I don't count it as a conversion, even though Google counts some of the events as events.
That's a really good segue into what we'll take as the last question. So Livia asks, SEO question. We love those SEO questions. With connecting Search Console,
yes,
they cannot attribute conversions to specific keywords still. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. Unfortunately, Google wants you to pay. So you can look at it from a general perspective, but with SEO, and there's no tool that's going to be able to do that because Google blocks that data from even being shared, is like you could see general conversions from SEO, but you can't pull it keyword by keyword unless you pay for it with PPC.
Okay, so from an agency perspective, let's talk about that, because the concern here, so Olivia continues to go on and says, the number one question that they receive from CEOs at companies is how much money does X keyword generate? And we've all been there, right? Like they don't want to invest time into content or resources or whatever that might be. So if you're not able to track at that, granular of a level, how do you convince that CEO, that it's still worthwhile?
I mean, you have to look at SEO from like an overall perspective. So one is that attribution report where you're able to see like how many conversions in the path came from SEO, but then being able to provide and say SEO overall led to this many conversions in terms of all the different categories or e-commerce with revenue. Like you spend X amount to manage the SEO and pay for the backlinks and all of that versus how much you got in return. I mean, if a client was still persistent on keyword, what you could do is do the math and just basically say, all right, I drove through, if you connect Google Search Console or look in Google Search Console, I drove 80% of my traffic through this keyword. Therefore, 80% of the revenue that overall came from SEO or 80% of the form completions that came through SEO most likely came through this keyword. Because if you're driving 300 conversions through SEO, for example, in a month, and 80% of the SEO traffic is coming through that keyword, by logic, you could say, all right, I estimate that approximately this many conversions came through that keyword. And unfortunately, that's the best you could do, like, because Google wants you to pay. It's like same thing with organic. If you do organic growth on Instagram, like you're not going to get that kind of level of granular detail because they want you to pay for it. Like these platforms are happy to offer organic, but they're not going to give you the same level of detail as paid because they want you to pay to play.
Mm-hmm. All right, Drew, with that, it's all the questions that we're going to take for today. But I want to give, first of all, I want to give a huge shout out to everybody in the chat because you guys were fantastic today. And I'm going to give a special shout out to Jeff Wallace because Jeff, you answered lots of people's questions. So you definitely helped out there. So thanks, Jeff, for helping everybody out. Drew, tell the people where to find you as we close out today's webinar.
Yeah, you could find me on my website, digitaldrewsem.com, all the social media platforms, including Threads. So it's all Digital Drew SEM. I mean, if you just Google that, you'll see all the channels are listed on there. And expect all to see an email from me.
Right on. With that, Jeff Wallace just trying to help, and that's what we're all doing. It's all a big, nice community, and we're all here to share information that we have. So thank everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. I love these. It's such a great day. And so I hope everybody enjoys the rest of their day, your evening, your afternoon, wherever you are. And I'm going to see you all at the next #SEJ webinars. Let's go. Have a good day. Bye, everyone.
Bye.